guys? No? Preparing the Facebook Live and I send it to my regular timeline instead of, oh well. All right. Let's see. Looks like we are rolling. And I'm Dr. Carla Freeman, and I want to welcome you all to our webinar today, the 3 uncommon keys to weight loss success. And I'm here with my friend Sarah from Minnesota, who's going to be having this conversation today. And I myself am a chiropractor here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I feel uniquely qualified to talk about weight loss because I can say I have lost hundreds, if not thousands of pounds over my lifetime. And for many years, I realized that I was seeking weight loss just to look good. You know, I wanted to look good. I wanted to attract the right partner. I wanted to fit in with groups. You know, my weight loss journey was a lot about wanting to validate myself and to feel good about myself. And I understand that's why a lot of people come into a weight loss conversation. And over the years, looking for an answer, you know, what diet could I do? What exercise program did I need to take on? And how could I lose the weight and keep it off and then not have to worry about my weight ever again? And I turned 50 years old last year. And I think I probably, out of my 50 years, maybe I have been concerned about my weight or trying to follow a diet or trying to change something about my body composition or how I look, probably since I was probably for 45 out of my 50 years. So in 2015, I became a chiropractor, and I'm also a healing practitioner. I do bioenergetic synchronization technique, and in my practice as a chiropractor, I use neuroemotional techniques. So over the past 15 years, I've been really interested in the link between your mind and your body and how stress and upsets and past experiences end up either as physical pain or tension, or in some cases, also it ends up as excess weight. So I work with that a lot in my practice. And probably since I opened my chiropractic practice in 2015, I've been avoiding talking about weight loss because I felt like I didn't have an answer, you know, after years and years and years of going on diets and losing, you know, by losing 10 pounds, 15 pounds, gaining it back, giving up. I've lost 70 pounds at a go, at least twice in my life, and then I gained it all back. I felt like I had no answers for anybody about weight loss, and I didn't want to talk about it. And luckily for me, the outcome of many other things I do in my practice for people results in weight loss for some of them. And I wasn't really paying attention for myself up until about a year ago when I discovered the Bright Line Eating program, and a friend invited me to do that with her, and I said yes because I was so tired, exhausted, and really upset, and I didn't think it would work. You know, now I'm like, it's like, oh, you turn a certain age and the conversation is, well, you're just not going to lose the weight because you're older and your hormones, and now it's going to be hard, and you know, this is kind of why bother. And but a friend invited me to take on this program, and it has been transformational. And for those of you who know me personally, know that transformational work is my other passion. My first passion is health and vitality and sharing that with people, and my second passion is transformational work. So when I found Bright Line Eating, it was a marrying of the two, and so I have had a transformation around how I view weight loss. So I finally decided that I have something to say and that I have something to contribute, and so I wanted to come online today and host this workshop and talk about 3 uncommon keys to weight loss success and 3 places that you might not be looking when you're thinking about how am I going to have the body of my dreams. So Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about you, and tell me what's your experience when in the weight loss world, either personally or professionally.
Yeah, thank you, Carla. And definitely can relate to multiple diets, many losing pounds over and over again. Probably have been working on it since probably age 12. I had
Mhm.
a lot of exercise. I've used a lot of restricting my food, and then I'll take too much and go the other way, and sort of this constant kind of obsessive about sweets and food. And so the mental exhaustion is the part that is difficult. I've more stabilized, maybe recently in the last few years, and some of it is just stabilizing my life and stabilizing my stress in my life. And so that's helped too. More the moderation story that nobody wants to do, but it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes sense. That's actually one of the keys is regulating your stress. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, and it's one of those things that we think there's nothing we can do about our stress, and we actually don't have any idea how much our inability to mitigate stress, because really the stress isn't going away, right? Life is going to happen, things are going to happen, there are going to be things that are stressful, even happy things. Like last year I had a wedding. I got married, which was like just the highlight of my life, practically something I worked towards for years, and it was such a huge accomplishment for me personally, and it might have also been one of the most stressful things I did all year last year. So we're going to talk about stress and how that affects weight as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. So you know I could have prepared some slides for this presentation. I didn't, but if I did prepare slides for this presentation, you can probably guess what would be on the first couple of slides, right? If you have ever looked at weight loss or ever thought about losing weight or ever talked to anyone about weight loss, you know that any good weight loss presentation starts with the statistics. And those statistics are that obesity leads to heart disease and high blood pressure and diabetes. And you know already that a high percentage of people in the United States suffer from one or more of these conditions. And in fact, in the United States, adults in the United 12%, no, I'm sorry, 40% of adults suffer from 12 or more conditions, 12 or more diagnoses. And I would say if you went down the list of those conditions, a large majority of them all are tied to being overweight or carrying extra pounds or ultimately being obese. And so it's no secret that weight gain and being overweight is a problem as a society, right? But I didn't make a slide about all that because I think that nobody, unless you've gone to your doctor and they have threatened you with a medication or threatened you with a procedure or threatened you and said you're about to develop a disease, like nobody comes looking for a diet because of those statistics. We know it's important, but until you actually are face to face with it, until you're really dealing with it, no, we're not waking up in the morning thinking about how can I avoid high blood pressure today. Nobody really gets out of bed that way unless someone's told you like, hey, I took your blood pressure a few times and it doesn't look so good. Then you might be paying attention. But I really want to talk to the person who is concerned about how they look, how they feel. Maybe you can't fit into your favorite outfit. Maybe you feel like when you go to meet up with friends that maybe now you haven't met up with in a couple of years and you're embarrassed, like, you've been excited about getting back out after the pandemic and quarantines, but you put your clothes on and you're like, I don't want to go because I don't look good and I don't feel good and I'm afraid, I don't think I'm going to feel comfortable. So there's that person. There's the person who really does deal with fatigue. Maybe you're like, well, 5 years ago, yeah, I should have done something about my weight, and now I'm so tired. I can't walk around the block, and I don't know how there's any way I'm going to diet, and you're just like you're lethargic. That's where I was a year ago. I just thought, gosh, if my husband and I can take a little walk around the park it's that's about it. That's the only exercise I'm going to be able to do. So so all those other health conditions and all the other outcomes from being overweight, they're important. And what you're probably want to do right now for yourself as you're listening to this is just take stock for yourself. Why do you want to look at losing some weight? What type of body do you want to have? You know, we talk about weight loss, and I know in one of my weight loss programs, like, oh, don't say weight loss, because you know, if you lose something, your brain is wired. We don't losing something is bad, so you don't want to lose the weight. You'll just find it again, right? So we say things like releasing weight, and we come up with all these other ways to say it. But really, what people want is they're carrying around more pounds than they would like, and they want those pounds to be gone, and they want their body to feel healthy, and they want it to feel energized, and they want to be able to, you know, hike if they want to hike, or maybe go run a little 5K with some friends. Or I know one of the things that inspired me here in the Southwest, we have these, they're practically like natural wonders of the world. You know, they're like canyons that you can hike down into, and some of them have these amazing waterfalls, and some of them you have to buy a permit like years in advance, but then it's a 10-mile walk in, and you got to camp down there, and it's a 10-mile walk out. But you see the pictures of people who've done it, and you're like, wow, if I can see that in my lifetime, that would be cool. And I got very excited because it's Havasupai Falls here, and you can buy a permit, but right now they haven't let anybody in since the pandemic started. But you can go on, and you can kind of pick your dates for people who've given up their reservations, and then you can plan it. But I'm scared, right? Because if I put that money down, like, am I going to be able to hike 10 miles into a canyon and then hike around and hike out? I don't know. I don't think I could. So that's what one of the things that inspired me was like, that's the kind of body I want to have. That's the kind of energy I want to have. Now, will I actually do it? I don't know. I might have some other fears, you know, that I might not be able to overcome. But when I think about what do I want to be able to do with my body, like, that's the kind of thing. So how about for you, Sarah? I know you said that recently you've had some stability in your life, and now you're kind of at a weight that is good for you. So what do you think about when you think about wanting to use your body? What do you want to do with your body?
Yeah, well, I feel like one is after 50, it's not that I have a choice of not doing some movement, because my body does feel like the less I do, the less I feel like doing. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I used to run a lot and do activities. Now I just enjoy walks, or being able to keep up with, you know, friends and kids. And I do feel like I'm getting a little more around the middle, and it's like, oh, what can I do about that? It just comes on. And so both wanting to look good and get into my clothes, but want to stay healthy. So that's a really good focus, healthy and active, so I can age gracefully.
Yeah, and you make a good point. You know, we, after a certain age, and it's usually for women, it's after childbearing age, your biology is no longer pulling for you to be healthy. You know, while you can still procreate and conceive, you have a biological imperative, and nature is actually pulling for you to be healthy and so like recreate yourself, right? But after a certain age, when you start to get premenopause and menopausal, nature is no longer pulling for you to be healthy. So you have to pull for it, and you have to create an environment that pulls for you to be healthy, and you have to really be active and like be on purpose about your health, because there's nothing, you know, there's no baby out on the horizon that nature is saying like, well, let's make sure you can support this other life, right? So it's very interesting, that conundrum. And when I work with women, I work mostly with women like our age, 50 and over, that's what they're really dealing with. They want to be healthy, they want to be active, they want to be able to keep up with their grandkids, and they want to be able to still travel and, you know, do some fun things, maybe not as, like I said, exciting as like hiking 10 miles in a canyon. I mean, I do know a woman that went ziplining at her 80th birthday. I always thought that was really cool. I don't know, you know, I don't need to be that extreme, right? But to have the option to do things. And as women, we really have to create our health after a certain age, and there aren't a lot of resources or a lot of good solid way, like, how do you do that, especially if when you were in your 20s and 30s and 40s you were super busy. you were raising a family, or you were, nurturing a business, or both. A lot of women were doing both, and their own health and their own self-care went to the bottom of the list over and over and over again. And what I find in my practice is that now that that time has passed and the kids are a little bit older, and you've got your career, if you figured it out, like creating the next chapter is really difficult because you're a little bit behind. There's like a lot of deficiencies. There's nutrition deficiencies, and there's like a deficiency of habits. Like you're just not organized to take care of yourself first, and it's really what's needed to keep going. So that's really one of my passions. Is I'm a stand for women to take care of themselves, put themselves first. Hopefully the earlier the better, but if now is the time and now you can do that, I want them to have a pathway, and I want you to be able to ramp up very quickly from whatever the fallout is, whatever it is that you had to give up to get this far. I want you to get it all back and then more, and then be able to have more. So let's dive in a little bit here to the 3 uncommon keys to weight loss success. So here I identified 3 things, and I would say there's probably 10 or 20. There's probably all kinds of keys to weight loss success and things that people don't think of, but I wanted to break it down to 3 very important ones. And hopefully there are things that are actionable that you can actually take action on right after this webinar, and start something for yourself. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is gut health. Now, I know in the last 5 or 10 years, gut health has really become more of a topic. I think 10 or 15 years ago when I started my practice, it was rare that you would hear somebody talking about even taking probiotics. I mean, maybe they'd say they ate yogurt every day, but now we really have there's a lot more information out there about your gut and your microbiome and how all of that affects your health, and it affects your brain health. It affects all kinds of things, but particularly when it comes to losing weight, there's a couple of things to be aware of about your gut health. The first thing I want you to be aware of is that if you have an imbalance in your gut, meaning that maybe you have an overgrowth of certain bacteria, they could even, there's good bacteria, bad bacteria. If you have an overgrowth of bacteria, you may have cravings. You may crave sugar, you may crave carbs. Some people crave salt, some people crave chocolate. There are even a few people that might crave protein, but the thing to realize is that a lot of times when you have a craving and you feel like you have no willpower and you just can't avoid that food, you think that it's you. You think you're a bad person, and if you only have more willpower, and if you could only stick to that diet that is so good for you, then everything would be fine, and you end up feeling bad about yourself. And what I want you to know is that it may not be you, like the person, like your personality, that's keeping you from being able to avoid the foods that don't serve you. It may be an actual imbalance in your gut flora that is causing that craving. And when you get that balance balanced, and you get the right flora and the right probiotics, and you start to balance it out, those cravings will disappear. And then it will be easy to stick to a healthier diet, and easier to stick to a plan. Now, there's 2 things I want you to consider. The first is you could just look at adding a good probiotic from your local health food store. You could just look at adding that. But if you've tried that, if you're saying, Dr. Carla, I heard about probiotics years ago and I've tried to take them, but I don't think they do anything, or I don't notice that I feel better, or that they help my cravings, or that they do anything about my weight, then what I want you to consider is that you need some diagnostics, okay? You need some testing to find out exactly what's going on in your gut, because I recently had some testing done. I wanted to see how sensitive to wheat I was, because I know that when I eat gluten, if I eat wheat products or breads, really any grains, things go downhill very quickly. But I wanted to actually measure and see what that was all about. And I wanted to know if I was dealing with a bacteria overgrowth or a parasite or something else. I had done some work with viruses. I reduced my viral load, and that made a huge difference in my energy. So I wanted to see if there's anything else going on in my gut. And I learned a lot from the test. It was so much information. I was very impressed with the lab that I used and the information that they could tell me from a couple of samples. But the most interesting thing that I learned is that some of the way that I made up started when I was born. There are certain microbiome indexes that they can measure now, and what the dietitian told me is that that microflora, that balance started when you were born. You get it from your mother, you get your microbiome from your mother, and I just started out a little lower. I just have certain things that they're just a little lower. And it's so freeing to know that, because again, for a lot of my life, it's felt like, gosh, I just have all these cravings and I eat all these things, and it must just be because I'm depressed and I'm a bad person and I can't stick to something. And no, there's actually like an imbalance that my body has been trying to make up for. And now that I know that, I know I have to keep putting in the good bacteria and putting in the foods that are going to balance out that microbiome. So it was very valuable information. So if you're interested in that type of testing, I can walk you through that and we can make a plan. I'm going to give you a link at the end of this to book a weight loss transformation discovery session. That's one of the things we can talk about. Okay. And then if you don't want to do testing, or if you've never tried probiotics, I have a 21-day Blitz challenge program where we basically take a high dose probiotic and some digestive enzymes, and we just start to retrain your gut flora to digest better and to pollinate better, so that you can digest better and reduce those cravings. And a lot of times, just with that program, people start to release weight just because they start to clean up their gut. So gut health is one of those things that if you have never looked at it, or you looked at it before and you didn't think you could find an answer, or it didn't seem to fit, let's talk, because there are a lot more diagnostics and a lot more things we've learned over the last few years that can help you. So the second key that we're going to talk about today is it's related to the gut, actually. In fact, I think all three of my keys are all related to each other. But the second key is something that Sarah and I were talking about earlier, which is stress. Like Sarah was saying, now that her life is a little more stable, it seems like her weight's a little more stable, and it's easier to stick to certain things and easier to eat healthy. And stress affects your body in a lot of ways, but here are the main ways that stress affects specifically weight loss. The first is it goes back to the gut. When you're stressed, your body's going to take all the energy that's available to run your cells, and all that energy, and it's going to push it out to your arms, your legs, all your big muscles, so that you can run away or you can fight. That's how you're designed. You might have heard of fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight, it's a natural outcome of fight or flight that your digestion is going to be diminished. So if you're taking all the right supplements and you're eating a great diet, but you are not doing anything to regularly take your body out of fight or flight and relax, it's going to be very difficult for you to take enough to balance your gut, because your gut, you're not going to get enough blood supply. Your body's not paying attention. It's not worrying about digesting your food. It's worrying about getting you away from the bear so that you don't become the food. Because if you're about to be eaten by a bear, who cares if you digest your own food or not, right? So that's how your primal brain works. And so what you want to do is you want to look at your life and see, where can you start? Where can you start to mitigate stress? Where can you start to put in some relaxation? So if weight loss is one of your goals, I'd recommend you start at meal times. I'd recommend that you start with turning off your computer, putting away your phone, setting the table or making a space for your meal, and then preparing your meal, and then nothing goes in your mouth until you're sitting down and you've taken like 4 or 5 deep breaths and you've gotten really present to, now we're eating. Because the opposite, or the other state beside fight or flight, the state you want to be in, is rest and digest. And you can't be in both states at once. You're either going to be fight or flight, or you're going to be rest and digest, and you can go in between those states rather quickly. But when it comes to meal times, you want to stop and really put yourself into rest and digest. And if you feel like you can't slow down, I invite you to go to my Facebook group, the Health Transformation with Dr. Carla Facebook group, and look at the last webinar I did. It's in guide 10, and the guides in little discussion areas, and there's a recording of a webinar I did, and I introduced the FAST technique, the first aid stress tool. That's would be also a really good technique if you feel like, gosh, I need to sit down and eat, but I just can't focus and I just can't get my mind off what's happening. You can use FAST, and I walk you through how to do that in there. So mitigating your stress. Now that's like the simple tip. There are many other ways to mitigate your stress for your health. And if you want to schedule that weight loss transformation session, we can find out what else you need. Maybe you need body work. Maybe you need some sessions of BEST or neuroemotional technique to really get to some past traumas and heal some things that might be activating your system over and over again. So stress is a really good place to look when it comes to weight loss, because again, it's something that you can control your reaction to the stress and start to get some strategies. And it's going to not only help you digest better and aid your weight loss, it's going to help with muscle tension and pain and maybe some of the other things that are contributing to you feeling lethargic or feeling tired and like you don't want to exercise or you don't want to put the energy into a diet. So that second key is mitigating your stress. And then the third key is community. Okay, so this is another place where I think women often discount their need to be with other women, think specifically with other women and with other people, and you really need support for what you're doing in your life. Okay, so like I mentioned, I joined, or I started following a program called Bright Line Eating, and one of the brilliant things about that program is that there are a lot of different community supports built in. And I think that for a lot of people, there's a lot of shame, or there's a lot of upset around the fact that you even have to focus on weight loss, and so you might tend to isolate yourself. A lot of people in the Bright Line Eating community have done what they call parts work or internal family systems work, and they have discovered that they have a part of them that's an isolator. So when they're stressed or they're dealing with something, they want to take themselves away and do it alone. But achieving weight loss is really difficult to do alone. And here's why. Here's why I think it's one of the most difficult things to do on your own, is because if you had an issue with alcohol, say you were an alcoholic and you wanted to stop drinking alcohol, or you were a drug addict and you wanted to stop using drugs, you would go to like a 12-step program or some type of, addiction recovery program. And Sarah, I know you're in the psychotherapy world. What's one of the first things that you would tell an addict if they were trying to stop using a substance?
Well, we definitely look at supports, that it's really, really difficult, if impossible, to do it alone. That, having people around you and stopping the connection with those that are drinking and using and such. So they're either going to help you or detract from your goal here often.
Exactly. So you tell people, number one, let people know you have a problem with this and you want it to change, and stop hanging around with the people who are doing those things. But guess what? Everybody eats food. And in our culture, at least, indulging ourselves with food, rewarding ourselves with food, being in community around food, usually the high fat, high sugar, celebratory, like we use food as entertainment, we use food as a reward, we use food in all these different ways, and it's like around a community. And so it's a conundrum. It's like, okay, you need to learn how to eat the right portions of the right food to support your body and fuel your body, but then you're going to go to the next birthday party or the next cookout, and what are people going to be doing? Oh my gosh, try this food, try this thing, oh, this thing is so pretty, eat this, eat that. So it's very difficult to get the right type of community, and you tell people, well, I'm not eating that right now. Oh, just try a little. Oh, right. There's all kinds of ways that you can be undermined when it comes to dieting. And I'm sure if you looked at your weight loss efforts, you would see that in some cases you were undermined. You were out to follow a certain diet, and then you were you were hanging out with your family or hanging out with a certain group of friends, and they just convinced you like, no, you don't need to do that, or you don't need to do that today. And then it just goes downhill from there. So it's very important for you to create a community that supports what you're up to, that supports the goals that you have. And that may be difficult at first because maybe everybody maybe they're carrying some extra pounds, but they don't seem too worried about it. Or maybe they're carrying some extra pounds and they have a conversation like, I'm going to die of something anyway. Like they're just going to have fun, life's too short. Or, somebody said to me the other day, like, I can't, am I really going to go my whole life without eating a cookie or a piece of cake? And I'm like, well, I actually decided for myself that, yeah, when I turn 100, I'm going to have a piece of birthday cake and that'll be enough for me. And in the meantime, not having the cake gives me a lot more energy. And so that's what I'm doing. And that may not be what you decide for yourself, but it's really important once you do decide what it's going to take for you to have the body you want and accomplish the goals you want, that you surround yourself with a community of people that are going to support that. And so one of the reasons I created the weight loss breakthrough session, it's a free 1 hour session, so that we can find out what are your goals. And so you can be very clear about what you want to accomplish. And the first place to create a community might be just to have a coach or a guide. And if you're interested, once we do that free 1 hour session, I'll tell you about the 6-month program that I've developed to support people who want to be on a weight loss journey, want to stick to it, and want to learn all of the new habits and really create the new identity. You're really going to create a whole new identity of yourself as a healthy person, an energetic person, maybe an identity as a thin person, if that's, if you're looking good is important to you, right? And to do that, it really takes coaching and it takes a guide. And then you would have a guide for that, as well as all of the clinical supports that we talked about as well, so that you had the program. We'll help you figure out what to eat. We'll help you figure out what to supplement with, and we'll help you figure out exactly what order to make the changes in so that they're sustainable, right? Because if you're like me, sometimes the getting the weight off is not the problem, it's keeping the weight off. And so I would recommend that you build a community around that, and I can help you discover, the community that's going to work for you. So those are the 3 uncommon keys to weight loss success. And so I just want you to look before we wrap up. If you were going to, if you're going to really take on your health this year, we've got about 6 months left of the year. A lot of people tend to start their diets in January at the beginning of the year, right after you've indulged for 6 weeks for all of our American holidays. And then, okay, now I'm going to take on starting the diet. I'm encouraging you not to wait. Like, let's start now. Let's just start where you are. But if you were going to start, what do you think would be the most beneficial to you out of the 3 keys? Would you start looking at your gut health? Or would you start with stress relief? Or would you start looking at your community and looking at how you could create some support around you to start to make this change? So think about that. And then, Sarah, is there anything for you? Is there anything that you heard in the 3 keys that maybe was new for you, or something that you wholeheartedly agree with and could speak to?
Well, I agree with a lot. I mean, there's nothing that was that it doesn't make sense for me. It all does. And I appreciate those and how clear that, these steps are. And probably the one I've done the least amount is the gut health. So that one I probably could use some help with for sure. And, and look at, the eating patterns or the combinations of food that I eat. And so I definitely have cravings for almost everything: salt, sugar, proteins, a lot of things. So
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think most people could benefit from gut health, just because it's one of those simple things that, sometimes a few simple changes, and you just, it surprises me how big of a difference you can make by just shifting around, some of those probiotics, and maybe taking out a couple foods that trigger things, but in general, starting to up that microbiome makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're going to wrap up, and I just want to thank you again, Sarah, so much for being here. and for having this conversation with us. And I'm going to put a link in the chat. I'm inviting you to book a free 1 hour session with me where we'll go through step by step and we'll look at where you've been with weight loss. We will have a conversation for you to get free of any shame or guilt or upset you have about how it's gone in the past and how you wish it was different. We're going to get rid of all of that for you. And when we're going to create a plan, we're going to create a plan so that after that 1 hour call, you're going to know exactly what you need to do to have weight loss success and to make that weight loss success permanent. So you can have the healthy, at Abundant Health Arizona here, we say you can have health, vitality, and wellness with ease. And so I'm happy to create that for you. So please book that session as soon as possible, and I'll look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, oh, definitely. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's see.